Hello, I'm Jerry Tachoir. This was a Zoom video conference that I had with Jay Hoggard and Matthew Geiger. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's something that I did or something that the Zoom software was doing, but for whatever reason, sometimes the person that was communicating was not in the picture. But I think you understand as we progress with this conference. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jerry Tachoir. I'm the chair of the Pedagogy Committee for the Vibraphone project. Today, we'll be discussing the expectations of incoming students regarding the Vibraphone and expectations when they graduate. I'm not currently teaching in a university as my touring and recording schedule is too busy, and it's not fair to students when I'm not available. I did, however, teach at Berklee College of Music for 2 years, and when I moved to Nashville in '79, I taught at Belmont University for 3 years, and both were really different experiences. At Berklee, students entered with a lot of talent and experience and were there more or less to perfect their skills. At Belmont, students were more beginners and they had to learn basic skills. So as a touring jazz artist, I offer master classes and clinics at universities in the US, Canada, and Europe. And at most of the smaller schools and state schools, I see a lot of incoming students who are either in drum corps or have a rock and roll background. And I also see some where, mom wanted the child to go to college and they really didn't know what they wanted to what they want to study. So they decided to be a drummer. How hard can that be? They like music. And then little do they realize that now they're required to do all of percussion. Drums, hand drumming, timpani, and keyboard mallet percussion. So they quickly discover that their rhythmical skills, once they learn the placement of the grand scale on the mallet instruments, then it becomes a bit more manageable. However, this is where the elephant in the room comes to play, the vibraphone. The vibraphone, well, first of all, students can simply play melodies on a marimba because you can control the ring. When you hit a marimba, what does it do? It goes thunk, right? If you want to sustain, you have to physically roll, so this can be controlled. The vibraphone, however, has all the keys on one plane. They don't overlap like they do on a marimba, so it makes the reach to stay in the center of the bars a bit more challenging. Then there's that pedal and the fact that the bars ring and music must be controlled, as ringing half steps and whole steps can sound really terrible. This is where the fact that historically the vibraphone has been known as a jazz instrument. With that, you're expected to know how to play chords as well as melody and understand comping, how to improvise, which requires harmonic knowledge. This is a lot. So marimba becomes more or less an easier way for the percussion to get into the mallet aspect of it. And that's why you see at a lot of college, you see kids that are playing Bach marimba things and working on those a lot. And the vibraphone is that kind of thing in the corner of the room that someday they hope to get to it, but it's intimidating. And so I want to talk a little bit with you two about your experiences on the college level and what you hope to see of your incoming freshmen and what you hope to offer, and hopefully in 4 or 5 years when they graduate, where they can take the vibraphone and what kind of skill sets you hope they develop. So I'm here with Matthew Geiger, who teaches at East Tennessee State University, and also Jay Hoggard, who is at Wesleyan in Connecticut. So let's begin with Matthew. Tell me little bit about what you see and what you hope to accomplish.
Thank you, Jerry, so much. It's great to be on and getting a chance to talk about this. I'll talk a little bit just about the experience I have here at ETSU. I know it's a little bit unique just in terms of what we do here, and it's not necessarily a full scope of what a college would expect or see. And so I do want to just give that caveat that this isn't everything we always see in the university level, which you all understand that. But ETSU, we get students from pretty diverse backgrounds, and some students have a really extensive knowledge of keyboards, and some have almost never played a keyboard instrument except for the audition material. And so getting it into the vibraphone can be pretty challenging right at the very beginning if a student has only ever played a keyboard instrument for 6 months or even less than that as they prepared for the audition. I think ideally what we want to see from students when they first come in is basically an awareness that the vibraphone is a unique instrument and has challenges that are unique to the vibraphone, and they're willing to address those challenges. If we see students that come in and just say, oh, well, I can play bells, marimba, xylophone, vibes, like they're all the same thing, then you're really running into some issues right away where the student is not ready to accept and be aware of the differences that make the vibraphone so interesting, but also so challenging to play in the very beginning. It's great when we do see students who have some experience on vibraphone. I know for a lot of teachers, if you can play vibraphone in high school, I would highly recommend playing that on your audition, because it does showcase a little bit more of an advanced awareness of different keyboard skills. So if you can play marimba and vibraphone, it's a level up, and an awareness that you can kind of set yourself apart in some of these college auditions. But most of the time, the students we see have either played vibraphone in drum, like marching band experiences, or just as a part of a quick concert band. And so they don't necessarily have a great understanding of pedaling, and they certainly have never really experienced dampening and those kinds of skills yet. And so a lot of it is either pedal on or pedal off. Those are your two options. And so that's kind of the early stages of what we see. And ultimately, sometimes they're really comfortable with 2 or 3 or 4 mallets, but most of the time they've never experienced and explored the different types of grips that are available. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but just that's kind of what we're used to seeing in the auditioning process here at ETSU. And what we try and accomplish over the 4 years while they're here is really just, I do a full semester on vibraphone with every student. And in that semester, I try and start from the very ground fundamentals of approaching the pedal and approaching some dampening exercises, while also using that as an opportunity to teach Burton grip. A lot of students come in with either Stevens grip or traditional grip, or they'll play Burton grip, but I use that as kind of the semester to pedagogically cover that as well, so I check that box. At that point, after a semester, we do include that in percussion ensemble. And so if a student is interested more in the jazz language, we give them more vibraphone lessons on top of that, specific to learning how to play standards and improvise. And those sorts of things are covered a little bit in that first semester that they cover vibraphone, but we really don't dive into that. And so in short, a student who graduates here at the bare minimum has played at least a solo on vibraphone. It's required for their half recital, which is their full kind of capstone assignment. And so by the time they graduate, they'll at least have explored using pedaling, using some dampening skills, and creating some harmonic and melodic ideas on their own.
So at the end of 4 years, then you think that they're going to be able to develop as a vibraphone player the skills necessary to do just about anything that requires a vibraphone player to do then?
I would hope that they'd be at a place where they could put the time in to get there. I think in 4 years, with all the things we cover, we're going to get to the basics. And if they really are passionate about vibraphone, absolutely. But to say every student would be able to do that, especially we have some students who really just don't have any interest in keyboards, and we still make them do this. But at the end of the day, they really verge toward other instruments, and we're okay with that. But I would say the students that are really invested in vibraphone, they do take advanced studies in improvisation. They're prepared to kind of step into either the jazz language, the avant-garde language, or kind of the classical language, as if those 3 worlds weren't interchangeable and intertwined.
Gotcha. Okay. Jay, let's talk about your school at Wesleyan, what you're seeing and what you hope to accomplish on graduation. If you would, please.
Well, I like what Matthew said on a few levels, and what you mentioned about the range of skill sets, what you both mentioned in terms of the skill sets of incoming first-year students, ideally. At Wesleyan is primarily a liberal arts model, and so and the music department is one of the innovative departments in the field of ethnomusicology. So the intent from the institutional intent from the beginning was not to be modeled in the conservatory model. And I went to Wesleyan as an undergrad and was a professional for 15 years, and then came back and started teaching. I've been teaching here for more than 30 years now, 31 years. So
just can't hold a job, can you?
Yeah, I'm like a reference point of stability as a jazz musician, you know, and well, as a musician, period, because we talk about crazy musicians, that's another subject. But the idea of first year students, uh, I've had every imaginable spectrum. I direct the jazz orchestra and teach theory and those things, as well as because we don't have a percussion track like in a conservatory model track. So and then the kind of percussion that we have is we have West African drumming, Ghanaian drumming, and we have taiko, and we have other South Asian uh, drumming, madangum, and Korean drumming ensembles, as well as we've had at different times samba ensembles. So we're more focused in a kind of global musical cosmology, so to speak. So I have gotten students who were interested in the vibraphone, as both of you said, who had a keyboard background, who had a drumming of some type of background, and who had none of the above. And it's always wonderful to get a student who, as a high school student, is familiar with, you know, all the components that are would go into being able to look at a lead sheet and be able to play it harmonically, harmonically, and to improvise on that. And so over the process of whether it's one semester, 1 year, and ideally 4 years, uh, the goal is to, as you both said, to acquire all of the above skills, or have some familiarity with all of the above skills, um, in order to be able to see a piece of music and execute it, or better yet, to fit into an ensemble using their ear and their intuition and be able to make a musical statement with it, particularly on this unique instrument called the vibraphone. So technical issues of movement, of, as you said, grips and lateral and vertical movement, and all those things are the kind of things that, you know, I cover. I have kind of my own system of how to go about 2 and 4 mallet playing. I don't teach 6 mallets because I can't play 6 mallets. Keiko Abe, and a few others have a corner on that market. But the idea is, yes, it's a total musicianship being being conceptualized and embodied in this instrument, as you both said. Also, the difference between a marimba and a xylophone and the vibraphone is ultimately the main difference is that pedal, and along with the alloy, the aluminum alloy, as opposed to wood, resonating wood or resonating kaolin or whatever, and how to make phrasing and articulation and melodic statements by way of the pedal on that instrument that's different, as you both described, on those wooden instruments. And so, you know, it's possible. I've met students from all kind of schools, all kind of backgrounds, and, you know, more advanced people, as you both said, come in with they understand certain basic things, but sometimes you have to reteach those things because people develop their own idiosyncratic methods sometimes, and I try to encourage that. If someone comes in and they hold the sticks this way and they hold their arm this way, I don't necessarily just want to say, well, you must do this. It's, well, you know, in terms of muscle movement and efficiency ergonomics, maybe it's better if you do this versus that. But if one is comfortable with the execution, that's a good thing. So I take a really holistic approach to each student as an individual, as opposed to having if I had 30 vibraphone students as such as at Berkeley, my friend Monty Croft is teaching up there now. This semester he's been teaching there, and my friend Uran Israel is the director of percussion there. I think he said they had altogether 200 mallet players, of which there were maybe 15 vibraphonists, or I don't know if that number is accurate, but when you have that kind of number, you do have to be a little more, you have to have a more general plan as opposed to the custom plan. I have the luxury of, I'll have 2, 3. If I have 4 students who are really interested in the vibraphone, I have a lot that year.
Yeah.
Because I'm more dealing with, the other instruments, and where I don't have to teach them technically, but it's, as ultimately both of you were referencing, where we're dealing with the phrasing, with the concept, all the conceptual components that go into the umbrella of the music that's called jazz.
Well, one of the things that I totally agree with you on is I have a lot of students who have come to me who started out as a marimba player, and they develop a marimba grip, the uncrossed grip, whatever version you want to call it. And they come and they go, I want to sound like you, though. And right away, they want to change grips to my grip, which is I studied with Gary Burton, so I use a variety of that. And I kind of say, well, you spent all this time developing the muscles and the skill set, and you're really good at the grip you use. Why don't you try then to adapt your grip to the vibraphone and see, it may not be able to do some of the things that I do, but you'll do it differently. And I really encourage them to not, because I found that you can't have 2 grips. There's just not enough time in the day, and not enough calluses to maintain what you need to maintain to have 2 grips. So you got to find one or the other. I tried the 2 grip thing once. When I was in high school, I played marimba grip, and they came over to vibes, and I would cross them. And it just drove me crazy. And it just, it was just hard to keep track of what muscles work where. And so anyway, I encourage them to kind of find their own niche, so to speak, in terms of grips. Now, when I studied prior to going to college, before I went to Berkeley, I had a guy in Pittsburgh. His name was Eugene Babe Fabrizi, who taught me percussion. And he was adamant that you're not just going to be a drummer, you're going to be a percussionist. You're going to learn all of it. And his reason was that if you ever get a call to go do the Icecapades or a show that comes to town, you're going to be required to play drums and timpani and bells and chimes and xylophone and hand drums and all this stuff. So you've got to be skilled at doing all of it. But I also found out that lately, as I tour around the world, that the vibraphone, it's usually that thing in the corner with the tuba sitting on it, that that people were afraid of. I mean, it's just an intimidating beast. And I try to, they see me play and they go, man, I have no idea that the capability and what you're doing. And it just looks so hard and so complex to dampen, and then to know chords and to hear chords and resolve chords and voice chords spontaneously. So there's an intimidation factor that goes with the vibraphone. But the vibraphone is not just a jazz instrument, as we all know. You can play anything. You can play country, you can play polkas, you can play whatever you want to play. It's a keyboard instrument, but it does have that reputation of being because a lot of the earlier players that played vibes were jazz players. So anyway, this has been good conversation. Anybody else, anything else you want to add, Matthew or Jay, that keep us rolling?
Well, I really appreciate what Jay was saying, both of you, but what Jay was saying about having the students find their individual voice. Again, Jerry, you kind of mentioned the same thing. But I think the vibraphone gives you so much more capability to control that voice. And that's also the biggest challenge, and I think an intimidating factor. You're talking about how students are so intimidated. Well, you're mentioning a ton of things that they've never even seen before, both in the jazz vernacular, but also just in the technical facility of the instrument. And so I could totally get where a student would just go, wow, you know,
Yeah.
and that's cool. But you're right. It seems when you put it in the jazz idiom only, it does seem that out of touch, because a student who doesn't understand that would never even approach it. And you're right, it fits in everything. But to go back to Jay's point, I like that the vibraphone, and from a pedagogical standpoint, I like that it gives the student an opportunity to create that sustained voice and learn how to control that sustain, because we really don't have a lot of other instruments that the sustain is that impactful and that controllable, which is very similar to the human voice. And so we don't talk with a decay like a snare drum. We certainly don't talk like a decay that's so short, nor that resonates forever. And so giving students the opportunity to play vibraphone, it starts to match the human voice and gives us that actual opportunity to bring an instrument to what we're trying to do musically. So I just like what you said, Jay.
Well, and likewise, I mean, we're birds of a feather. You know, the three of us, we bang on that ironing board with the Venetian blinds on it. You know, and people still say, "Oh, I really loved what you played. It's a cool thing. Do you have to practice?" You know. Yeah, no, I never practice. I just make it up as, you know, and yes, we have this unique path, instrumental path. We play this instrument that we all know its value and its transcendent beauty, and how we were inspired by the recordings and personal performances of great artists that we heard on these instruments. But it's still an underutilized, underrepresented, under everything instrument. So, you know, hopefully, and so by nature, we can't have the kind of attitude that someone who plays a more popular instrument, not saying that everyone does, but some do have, well, oh, you mean you don't know how to do that? Well, get away from me. You know, we have to be more embracing and encouraging, and oftentimes we'll find out that some of the kids who are drawn to the vibraphone end up being the best musicians in the ensemble, or some of the best musicians in the program, because all of the above. And so, but you know, when we talk technically about the this or the that, and all those things that can be intimidating, yes, they are to some people, and then others, they
It's a
may not
challenge.
know it, but they're drawn enough to it and drawn to that sound that they're willing to, okay, I want to learn that. And that's the ideal when you say about 4 years of exposure. 4 years of exposure should be enough to get them to know some things, and to know that now that you've been exposed to that, you have the next 80 years or 90 years to try to figure out what it is.
Work it through. That's true.
Absolutely.
You know, when I got started, and this, you know, like 50 years ago, I remember there was a handful of people who were vibraphone players. There was just a handful of us. And the encouraging thing is now, I mean, you can look on YouTube, there's a lot of people that are playing the instrument and are digging it, and people like it. So I guess it's helping. I mean, the word is sort of getting out slowly, but like you said, it's a lifetime commitment of learning how it is different from the other percussion instruments, and how we have to control it, play it. So very important. Thanks. Matthew, anything else to add to close down this?
No, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this.
Okay. Well, Jay, anything else to close?
Yeah, well, shop talk is always great with you, Jerry, because this is a good thing. This is a great thing, and by the time, you know, 50 years from now, we're in 2024 now. In 2074, they'll watch something like this and say, "Wow, there weren't 100,000 or 1,000,000 vibraphonists like there are now." You know, that'll be a cool thing.
Artificial intelligence is going to take over. There won't be any more vibraphone players. There'll be a computer.
I reject that. I keep saying that what we do is very human, and
Amen.
and you can emulate the this and the that, but it requires the human interaction that we've all focused upon, and that's a big part of our teaching. That's what our students are going to keep alive.
Yeah. Well, with that said, we're about out of time. I just want to say that hopefully the elephant in the room now, the vibraphone, will get some more acceptance, and we'll get these incoming students to realize that it is an instrument that is obtainable and that can be perfected and played, and don't be afraid of it. And at the end of 4 years, you may not have it totally mastered, but you have the rest of your life then to develop it and work at it and create the craft, if you so choose to be predominantly a vibraphone player, or if you're just a percussionist. Even then, you have to have an awareness of the capability of the vibraphone, because at one point you will be called upon to play this instrument in some capacity, whether it's a show, whether it's a musical, whether it's with the symphony. So you have to be in touch with the instrument. So with that said, Jay Hoggard and Matthew Geiger, thank you so much for being part of this, and we'll put it together and get it out there, and hopefully somebody will benefit from it. Thanks again, guys. I do appreciate it.
All right, Jerry. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.